Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. I'm David Reed. Thanks for hanging around with us all this week. It is my privilege to welcome someone I have admired for a long time, actor Steven Culp. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you very much.
You have no idea what's been happening in the world of Stargate, right?
I haven't a clue. No. What's going on?
This past Wednesday, I and my partner of like 25, 30 years announced to the world that the fourth Stargate series is in development by Amazon for Prime Video.
Oh,
So the
cool.
the entire fandom is just absolutely the apple cart is just knocked over, and we're just trying to pick everything up. It's like, okay, now what's going to happen? So it's all very fresh to everybody, and
Hmm.
who knows what the future is going to hold. So we're very excited right now. We're thrilled to have you here.
Right. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
When you look, how long did you know? What age were you when you realized that this was what you wanted to do with your life? What was that? What was that impetus? What was that inciting incident? You know?
I don't know if there was an inciting incident. I think I pretty much wanted, I think I knew I wanted to do something all my life,
Hmm.
ever since I was a little kid. And I would imagine myself, when one of my earliest memories is dancing in front of the turned off TV screen so that I could see myself dancing on television. And I was always interested in doing something. I think I thought I was going to be a writer for a really long time. When I was a kid, I was really into comic books. And so I imagined myself as maybe writing for comic books. And then as I got into high school, I learned how to play guitar, and uh, I started playing guitar in little bars and stuff around where I lived, and working on writing my own songs and stuff. And then I sort of fell into doing theater when I was sort of later in high school, and then specifically in college, where I started to really work with other student actors and stuff like that. And at my college, there was a lot of room for somebody who wasn't a theater major to come in and do stuff. They had a program for, a playwriting program. So you'd have your premiere theater, they called it, and there were usually one acts, and they'd have an evening of these new plays that you would do, and then they had their main stage productions, and they had directors' workshops, and there was just a lot of things to do. And I think that's where I realized out of all the things that I was thinking about doing, acting seemed to be the one I was most suited for. Although then I decided to go to graduate school, and I went to the Brandeis University in Massachusetts, and I got an MFA. And I got up there, and I realized that I didn't know squat about acting. And I spent a long time thinking that I'd made this huge mistake, and what was I going to do with my life? And it took about a year and a half for the work. I mean, I had some good things happen along the way and some, negative things, but the work itself really started to click in right about the middle of my second year. And then I was kind of off and running, um, pretty much. And just for the sci-fi connection. So our school was one of many schools, Yale and Juilliard and NYU, et cetera, that would do these things at the end of your graduating year called the league auditions. It was the League of Professional Training Schools, and you would do this um, showcase of scenes for all these agents and casting directors in New York. And Brandeis was kind of the wicked, the redheaded stepchild of this.
Okay.
We went up after Yale, and Yale finished their presentation, and half the room left.
Oh
But
God. Thanks,
still,
guys.
it went
Thanks. See
it
ya.
went pretty well. But my movement teacher and a very talented woman who directed me in several plays at Brandeis was Cheryl G. McFadden, better known as Gates McFadden, better known as Dr. Crusher on this was way before Star Trek, The Next Generation. And she was one of not everybody was really tuned into what was going on in New York when I was at Brandeis, but she was. And when I got back from the league, she said, "Okay, Steve, how did it go?" And I said, "Well, I got nibbles from so and so and so and so and so and so. And she said, you need to go down there tomorrow and start, follow up on this. So as soon as I got a chance, I took the bus down from Massachusetts. I started meeting with a lot of these agents who were all very encouraging. I went off to Vermont to do Shakespeare that summer. And then by the time I got back into town, they'd signed everybody that they wanted to sign, there, but good luck, but good luck. But except for one guy, except for one agent, a man named Paul Decker, who did soap operas. And he said, he was part of a bigger agency, but his department was soaps. And he didn't make any pretensions about it. He just said, I want to send you out for
Mm-hmm.
some soaps.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of took him less seriously. But he was the last guy I called after a couple of weeks of being, rejected. And he's like, Steve, where you been? I've been waiting for you to call. And he immediately sent me out on a audition for Another World, which was a soap opera at the time.
Yeah.
I read for the casting director. Then next week, the casting director brought me in for the producers. Then I got a screen test out of that. And so a few weeks later, I'm doing a screen test for Another World. I didn't get that job, but like
But yeah.
a month later, Paul called and said, Another World wants to give you a 3-month contract to do this, this sort of character, this kind of nice young guy who turns into psycho baby kidnapper. Uh, and it's just 3 months. So, but it was really fortunate for me because I had, I got to New York in September, and by the winter I had an agent and a job. So, and I've never, I've had my ups and downs since then, but I've never really looked back.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's the long answer.
Thank you for it. The thing that I pull out of that is you probably went through a fair bit of time there where you had some serious imposter syndrome. Sounds like trying to figure out what it was that you want. Or did you not look at it that way? I would have in your place. If it took me a year and a half for it to click, I would have been like,
No,
I'm not sure if this
I
is
don't
going
think
to,
I
right?
ever
Am I
had,
misinterpreting that?
I had my own neuroses. I
I
don't think
see.
I needed imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Um, you know, I, but mine was more like I had a tremendous amount of self-consciousness and stage fright,
I see.
and
I'm too
performing
visible.
could be really joyful, but the time leading up to that could be really fraught. And I had a lot of insecurity about that. So I don't know if it was imposter syndrome, but I had insecure. I didn't want to fail in front of people, which is a drawback. I think if you really want to get somewhere as an actor, you got to be willing to put it on the line. But then when I was at Brandeis, I had a few really like very challenging roles, especially in my third year there. And what I sort of developed this personal technique that I carried with me into the professional world, which was I really, when I was crafting a role, making choices, I did things that required a lot of commitment from me, that required me to really be there and be committed, and choices that were bold and that I had to do full out. And I used to tell myself, I used to say this thing to myself. When I was, thinking about things I was going to do, I'd think, okay, if they don't like this, they're not going to just not like it. They're going to hate it. You know what I mean? Like no half.
Catastrophizing.
And so it was just a way of psyching myself up and making me feel like, okay, I gotta commit because I didn't want to hang back and be sort of
Mm-hmm.
questioning and insecure about everything I was doing. So I really tried, and I carried that with me when I got to New York, and it sort of colored a lot of especially the early years of working. Then I kind of mellowed out about it a little bit. I didn't make that demand on because I was always looking for something in a play I was doing, moments where I was really just kind of taking a tremendous risk and putting it all on the line. And I realized, you know what, not every play is like you can't do the same thing every time. you can't demand that of yourself from every piece of material. So learn to take the material on its own terms. And I've been at this for over 40 years, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning that stuff, still developing.
The flexibility of your work is so wild to watch. The thing that I most know you from is Major Hayes in Enterprise.
Mm,
This is Star Trek is in my DNA since 4 years old, 3 or 3.5. And this season comes along that has upended everything that we've seen on this franchise before. We have a whole season long arc. And really, you were one of the key players of this thing where there's an external force that's threatened all of us.
hmm
Your team has come in here, the Military Assault Command, the MACOs, onto Enterprise into a perilous region of space to do some dirty work, to do what has to be done. And I was very, in this future where everything's idyllic and perfect. What kind of a guy are they going to bring in to do this because Starfleet is functionally very militaristic, but they are not military. And when you bring in actual military and play in that,
Yeah,
how's that going to play against some of the other characters, particularly Dominic Keating, who played Reed?
yeah.
He's the security guy on board. He's chief of security. This guy is in his space. How is that going to play? You got to do an arc over several episodes of that season. I loved that character. I
Oh, good.
come
I'm
from a
so glad.
huge military family, and I
Uh-huh.
completely related to this guy where it was like, yeah, he's, in this situation where he's got someone else pushing back against his authority. He's here to do his job. But in there,
Yeah.
how far can you push someone before, you know what? You keep on pushing me. If I'm defending myself, at what point do I push you back to the point where I start enjoying it? And it breaks out into a fight in the corridors at one point in the show. Your arc from beginning to end was fantastic. Was that as
Oh,
rewarding
well,
as it
thanks.
looked like to watch?
Was it? I'm sorry.
Was it as rewarding as what it looked like to watch? To play
Oh,
to play that from beginning to end, a
was
true
it? I
finishing
thought you
arc.
asked if it was it as rewarding for me to watch, and
Yes,
that's always dicey
yes, no,
when
to
I'm watching my
perform.
own work. Um, well, that was when I originally went in to read for it, they were talking about 10 episodes, and I
Ah,
wished I'd gotten a few more because I felt like
yeah,
the way it went, I showed up in the premiere and then I did one episode where I was really felt like I was like the red shirt or whatever,
oh,
where
the Vulcan episode. Yeah, are
where
they
we
gonna
go
knock
to
him
the
off?
planet
Yeah,
and then the next time you see me, Reed and I are like this and we have this fight. And I wished we had had a few more episodes to build up to that. I would
yeah,
really like that because it was supposed to be like 10 episodes and it just became five because as they're writing the season and shaping the season, things just, take their own shape.
yeah.
Um, it was interesting about that role, and I know I've talked about this at conventions
Hmm.
before, at Star Trek conventions, but that role was kind of for me. I was trying out a different way of working. I had just done a role in this David Mamet film called Spartan, and it was really just the phone rang, and it was my agent. I got offered the job. I'd never read for anything, and it's just like a scene or two of this FBI guy who's being interrogated, or Secret Service guy who's being interrogated, and Mamet has this real reputation. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
and I wanted to sort of get on his wavelength, before I got there. So I picked up this book that he wrote about acting called True and False. And, I mean, I have actor friends who, want to tar and feather him for this book. I loved it. There's a great quote on my copy from Alec Baldwin, and it says something like, I disagree with everything Mr. Mamet says, and I encourage you to devour every word. And that's exactly
yeah,
how I felt about it because he doesn't really know acting, and there was a lot of stuff I disagreed with, but
yeah.
there was a lot of stuff he said that I thought was really spot on. And one of the things and I sort of took his technique that he was talking about in the book, and I applied it to my work on Spartan. But let me know if I'm getting too much into the acting
No, keep
weeds
going, man. Keep going. If you've
here.
got some time, sure.
But basically, when you're working on especially a play, but also in TV and movie, you're you've got the arc of the character that you're trying to find, the story that leads you through as the actor, um, the story that you're telling. You do a lot of research. You do a lot of backstory on your character, and you build up this thing. And Mamet's like, all that's wasted effort. Just pay attention to the words,
Mhm.
say the words, play an action that is, in keeping with what the writer is writing, and that will become your character. And I thought, and I had just done some work that I thought, maybe I could have used a little bit of this on that. So Major Hayes came along, and I thought, well, this is a perfect one to experiment with that. So I didn't do a lot of what I normally did. I really just tried to, what's it telling me on the page? What's my action in the scene? Let that carry me forward, and that's going to tell me who my character is. And I thought it was kind of perfect for Hayes, because Hayes is so much the job. The man is the job. He's very self-effacing, in the sense that it's not about him. It's never about him. It's about the job, the job, the job. And even when he is getting into a fight with Malcolm,
Mhm.
it's why won't you let me do my job?
That's it. He sees
So
himself as
so
a as an
that's
instrument.
yeah, he really sees himself as an instrument and very military in that sense. Jump this high.
That's right.
How high would you like me to jump, sir? That's the kind of guy that he is. Now, looking back on it, I think I could have done a little more of my normal work, and I think he might have popped a little more.
Mhm.
Sometimes when I watch it, I feel like it's too restrained, it's too held back. But it was a totally different energy for me, and for that reason, it's an interesting thing for me to watch. I can't really tell if it's good or not, but I'm just going, well, this is different. This is really different for me. The way he is. Um, yeah, even when he's mortally wounded,
Oh
and
God.
he's
Use
talking with
Mackenzie. She knows the
he's
team.
talking with Malcolm, and what does he do? He gives advice about what to do.
Mhm.
He's not concentrating on himself at all. He's a total, you know, gung ho military. What's my mission? Yes, sir. You know,
That's
that's him.
Yeah, he spends the last 10 seconds of his life passing the torch, making
Yeah,
sure that Corporal Mackenzie's going to be the one to pick it up. And
yeah.
there's
And then
something
and then
so
Malcolm,
noble about
as I
that.
recall, Malcolm doesn't do it.
I think he eventually tells her, I would suspect.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
what he does is he leads them himself.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
one of the previous episodes was Hayes entrusted Reed and company to go to this place and get something and come back, and his guy was gone, and
right,
Hayes
right.
is like, I'm sure you did what you could, but I would appreciate a full report. And Reed internalizes, because that was supposed to be his journey. That was his family
Yeah,
was in the Navy, and he didn't do it, and so he sees Hayes from that perspective.
yeah.
All I can tell you is you may wonder about the effectiveness of the character, but also all I see there is pure truth.
Oh,
You
good,
know,
good.
something else that may ring really true. Henry Wallace, Miller's Crossing, Stargate Atlantis. Do you have kids?
I do.
How far would you go to keep one of them alive?
Well, that's an unanswerable question. I mean,
Exactly.
you imagine that you'll do anything on earth to keep them alive. Um, but when push comes to shove, one never knows.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
so it's an unknowable. But I think that, both my wife and I, we're fiercely protective and supportive of our kids, and really want to do we want them to have great lives, you know, and we support and encourage and help, and yeah,
I think that part of a big chunk of the puzzle here is we are talking about a man who is the head of a very large machine that the government wields to to, to to create technology in secret to help us against our enemies. So he already has to have a certain level of Machiavellism about him
Oh,
to
absolutely.
even think that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all greater good, greater good. You know, we've got to create these things because we've got to
Yeah,
recognize
greater
that
good, maybe.
the planet has to be safe. You know, from these alien threats
Yeah,
that they don't
maybe,
even know
maybe.
about. And then his daughter gets sick with a pedestrian earthbound problem, and he has
Hmm.
these tools at his disposal. What would you do? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I don't know if I would poison someone with some of this technology,
Hmm.
but if my child were in danger and I could non-violently convince someone to protect them in exchange for spending the rest of my life in prison, where do I
Hmm.
sign? You know, I don't know if I could. Again, you know, we wouldn't know until we were in that situation. I couldn't hurt
Yeah,
anybody, but I would be
it's
willing. I
interesting.
would be willing to go to
Interesting to hear
prison.
you talk about it because I think I was thinking pretty much along the same lines as you were just now as you were speaking. But I did look at the episode because this is we're talking almost 20 years ago now
Exactly.
when we shot that. Um, and reviewing the performance, I would say that's one I would like to do over. I think I would approach it very differently now and more effectively. But as far as what happened with that was that when I originally took the job, I had done this series for ABC that was sort of being held off. They were going to burn it off over the summer, but it was really limiting what I could do in the meantime. And so I went up to American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco to do where I'd worked before to do this two-character play by the Scottish playwright David Harrower called Blackbird. Um, Two characters, one scene, 90 minutes, intense. And I'd done a lot of staged readings and workshops, but I had not done uh, committed to a full production of a run of a play since my twins had been born 7 years before that. And I'd also been really busy working, so I hadn't had time. But because of this series that I'd done that I was being held off and I was limiting my work, I was like, oh, great time to do a play. So I contacted ACT and they brought me up there. But it was the first play I'd done in 7 years, the first full production of a play. And it was really challenging and really demanding and there was a rawness about it. Um, and really fulfilling. And I was thinking, man, I want to keep this energy going. I really, and so I got back and I was only back for a week or two when I got this call from Stargate and they offered me this job and they sent me the script and I looked at the script and my first thought, and I read it and my first thought was, I don't have a clue how to go about this. I just don't have any idea where to even begin with this character. So I should say yes. So when I went up, I really I had a because there's a lot to encompass and there's a
Yeah.
lot to embody with this guy. And and I think I did, it's hard to remember exactly at the time, but I it was sort of concentrating on the way you were looking at it about the what's happening with his daughter and the whatever emotion that stirs up and that quandary and what am I going to do? And when I look back on it now, I feel that I didn't really get there. I didn't really get there. There's a certain stiffness, a certain forceness about it. I think I was going for a certain stillness that I don't think really works. Um, because stillness is more power.
Mm,
Um, and falling into an actor trap, I think of even though all the emotion is contained, I'm trying to contain it.
mm.
As an actor, I'm still really thinking about the tragedy and how I'm feeling about it and the emotion of it. And that's usually a trap. Um, because if it's really gonna, it's much better to not think about that stuff at all and keep the lid on the pressure cooker. Because then when it does blow, it's something.
You mean on camera in the performance in the moment? You don't want to rehearse too
Yeah.
much of it ahead of time. Is that what you're indicating?
No, no, no. I mean structuring the part and on
Oh,
camera in the
okay.
moment. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
Keep, in your performance. Don't dwell. And I think I see myself in a lot of the scenes sort of playing the tragedy, as we used to
Yeah.
say in, theater school. And and also at that time, this is 20 years ago, I didn't there was a lack of well, there weren't as many just apparent examples of megalomaniacal billionaires who think they control everything and who don't take no for an answer. And outside, and I don't have to name names. There are plenty of them out there.
Yeah.
Um,
It's certainly
and
more
kind of
realistic now.
it's more and kind of outsized personalities like that. And it seems to me that now, if I was going to do it, I wouldn't acknowledge that tragedy at all because I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. If this is because no one's ever, I'm not a loser. I've never failed. This didn't work. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And and you've got that sort of size and ego. And you're not going to let anything stand in your way. And if you get met with this no, then you're going to go past that and do the next thing. And then, that's a no. Okay, well, here, I'm going to inject you with this thing. And it builds and builds and builds because he doesn't let um, the possibility of defeat enter into his head. And I think that's the way I would do it now. And so then when he finally meets the no, then there's an emotional release. He's not like stiff upper lip, I'm suffering. Forget about that. I'm not going to let suffering in. I'm going to win. And
Yeah,
you do that
his
for as long as you possibly can until the script doesn't let you get farther.
yeah,
The script makes you lose.
because his self-perception at that point would be shattered. I was listening to what it was that you were saying about taking it that way to where you punch me, I punch back 10 times as hard. And I just have this mindset about myself that's the way that it is. And I'm asking myself as I go along, what in the script would you have to change to convey that with a presence and emotionally? And the answer is not one word. It would just be the
No,
delivery would be different. That's all.
the presence, the energy, the delivery, just the whole way you approach things, it changes your intentions,
Yeah.
your actions, the way you go about things. And I think that role needs a bit of an outsized energy, where the way I'm approaching it in the episode is very kind of interior, I feel, and not as effective and not as compelling, it
Mm.
seems to me. Having said that, I've talked to a lot of people who really love that.
Mm.
Not too long after that, we were on strike. The Writers Guild
Yes.
was on strike, right, not too long after it aired, and I was, marching around Warner Brothers with a sign in my hand, and the nice young woman who was marching beside me said, I saw that episode of Stargate, and it really affected her, and I thought, oh, that's good, that's good. But I've gotten compliments for it, and I appreciate them all, and I appreciate that you're having me on to talk about it, almost 30 years later.
Absolutely.
But so I hope I'm not looking a gift horse in the mouth to say I'd have done it differently. But there's a lot of stuff from around that time I think I'd like to do over again.
There's I didn't remember a couple of the scenes until I rewatched it where he really wants to come off as no. That's not right. I don't think this is a bad guy. I think that this is a guy who has been dealt the hand that he's been dealt. He's been rewarded by certain blessings, and he's going to
Hmm.
execute them. And in this circumstance, it necessitates taking two people, one
Yeah.
with the work and the other one to incentivize the work to be done.
Yeah. It's
And
pretty extreme.
when it's most extreme, and when he's at the bedside of his child, he's given his word repeatedly that he's going to let them go, even one of them that he's just injected with experimental drugs.
Yeah.
And she comes to his bedside and says, "Will you do this? Will you let me go?" And it's Frodo with the ring in the mouth of Mount Doom. "You're here. What are you going to do? Will you let me go?" And the delivery there is just so subtle, and it's just, no, it's not going to happen. Because now he's staring into the abyss. The abyss is staring back, and
Yeah.
he can't do it because there's nothing left. She's gone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was pretty terrifying, when you look at it that way. And
Yeah.
I think that the other method that you're considering would have been perfectly valid, but the one that you executed,
Oh, well, thank you.
this is
Thank you.
solid. This is solid stuff. And there is a fitting arc that occurs there where it's like ultimately he has to pay the ultimate price to
Right.
unlock the
Right.
knowledge to save his child.
That was the first scene I shot.
Oh, you're kidding.
Last
With
scene.
Shepard, with Flanagan?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Wow.
first morning I was there, like the first scene of the day. That was the very first thing I shot.
Isn't that frustrating? That has to be okay. I have to get my mind set into the space that I'm going to be 4 or 5 days from now and go. And just hope that
Well,
just know that it's there.
yeah, yeah. That's what preparation is for.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. So I've got some fan questions here for you.
Okay.
Let me pull this up here. My buddy Kevin. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. I have not seen it. He says, it has my favorite opening of the franchise. I'm assuming you're in that. Do you have any fun memories or stories from Jason Goes to Hell?
The I'm trying to think what the opening. Because it's a long. I'm not sure where for Kevin the opening ends because
Okay.
it's a long setup. That job was a real blessing in my life. Because it came at a time, I had left New York, where I was fairly successful doing theater, and I started getting work out in LA, and I moved out to LA. And when I moved, uh, I was had to start over much. The start over was much more difficult than I had imagined, and there were a few years where I was not working much except doing like small theater plays for free and stuff. But
Hmm.
a casting one of the casting directors, the Barry Moss and David Giella, who cast the movie, they were we were connected from New York, and they were big supporters of mine. And David came to see me in a small play I was doing. He said, "Hey, Steve, I've got this script. This we want to bring you in for this horror film." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What is it?" And I read it, and it wasn't my type of film at all. And I was actually kind of I was reading to my wife as she was cooking some of the stuff like stage directions, like in all caps, shoves his face into the deep fryer. And I was like, going, man, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have read this script, and now I'm auditioning for it. And I was like, oh, okay. But I came up with a way of doing it that I thought was kind of tongue in cheek, that sort of pushed the ridiculous envelope a little bit.
Okay.
And I thought, based because right before the morning of the day that I went into audition, I just for inspiration, I turned on some of the daytime talk shows like Maury Povich
Hmm.
and Geraldo and stuff that were on at the time, and it just occurred to me how ridiculous because I played this tabloid TV anchor guy, and it just struck me how stupid and absurd a lot of this stuff was. And so I
Hmm.
just decided to tweak it a little bit to sort of push it to the edge of being really absurd. Um, tongue in cheek. And I thought, well, if they don't like it, that's fine. I didn't expect them to like it.
You have to be willing to
I
fall
went
every now
in.
and then.
I went in, and Adam Marcus, who was the director, and Sean Cunningham, and I think Dean Lorey, the writer, was there. Um, they loved it. They just cracked up. They were like, I had that job in like a day,
Wow.
and then the filming of it was, because I'd been having, my career had been having a difficult time, and I was thinking about, God, what else? Maybe because I was in my mid 30s at that point, I think. And I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do with my life? I'm not sure. Maybe this stuff isn't working out. And doing Jason was a job that didn't demand to be taken seriously in the way that I was taking other work that I had done seriously. It was just fun.
Yeah.
It was, and you use your imagination. It's playtime. It's cops and robbers or cowboys, as a kid. It's just fun. And rediscovering that sense of fun was something I remember the first morning I was on the set, and I become a manifestation of Jason in the course of the film. And
Okay.
I
Thank you for that.
I had some special effect makeup on me. I was just beginning my transformation, and got some blood, and I'm sitting there, on the set, waiting for them to light the scene, and doing this ridiculous movie, and just thinking, I love this.
Yeah.
This is the place for me. I'm so at home here. This is what I'm meant to be doing. And I loved everybody that I worked with. And in fact, Adam, um, there's a movie, I haven't seen it, but I think it's come out, it's playing at festivals, and I believe it's called Hearts of Darkness,
Okay.
the making of The Final Friday. It's been shown at some places, and I'm sure it's pretty good. Adam had this great, great, youthful, enthusiastic energy. He really knew what he was doing. Loved the cast and the very hardworking crew. I mean, everybody was just fantastic.
It's okay to have yeah, here it is. It's okay to have different, periods of your life. Sometimes it's going to be, isn't that great? Sometimes it's
Yeah.
going to be Glenn Ross. And
Yes.
sometimes it's going to be Kill Bill. And you have to
Well, hey,
be,
hey, Kill Bill is a fantastic movie.
oh, it's so much
Kill Bill
fun.
is not, I mean, not to diss Jason Goes to Hell, but Kill Bill, I first time I saw Kill Bill in theater, I was like, okay, if you want to see a big, dumb, ridiculous comic book movie, this is the movie that you want to see
That's
because
right.
it's there's just a lot of genius in there.
It's
Yeah,
pure fun. Like I finished it, I hadn't seen it for years later, and we had a movie night in the before times where we watched one every week, and the week between part one and part two, and I was like, I can't wait. I cannot wait for this. And I'm not an action movie guy, and I
yeah,
loved
yeah,
it.
yeah. I'm
There
not
are
much
just
either.
some things that just
Well,
transcend their genres.
the things he does with structure
Yes.
and with time and skipping around with time, and the way he'll vary the technique, the point of view and the film technique throughout the movie. Okay, you got your anime here, and here you've got your well, this is in Kill Bill Part Two, where she goes and gets the training.
Yes.
The it's just, and it's a whole other.
It's like
He's
25-minute act break. It's like, where are
he's
we?
he's a genius.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't liked all his movies equally,
Yeah.
but what an artist this guy is. So yeah, I was Kill Bill. That's a fantastic movie.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see the full cut of it all at the same time because there's nothing quite like it. Lockwatcher. So here's a show that I've been really looking forward to. It's been sitting on my shelf. You played the president in The Last Ship.
Mm.
Does anything stand out from that experience God, I want to watch this one, but that's one, gonna have to lock myself away for a while and just ingest it. Does anything stand out?
Um, well, it stands out as far as just being a good role and a great crew and a great cast and
Mm.
working with, directors. And this one, well, I'm not going to say it didn't fall in my lap. I did read for the show, but I read for the part of a general. And I went in and read with Tony Sepulveda, the casting
Yeah.
director, and it was just me and him, and maybe an assistant. But I was reading with Tony. He's got the video camera up there, and I did one take, and he went, "Well, that's perfect. Do you want to do another one?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, sure." And then I did another one, and then I didn't hear anything about it. And that's typical. That happens all the time. But then a couple weeks later, I got a call, and I got offered the president, and it actually turned out to be a better role than the general. I thought. Um, but I just remember the yeah, yeah, it was a great part, and once again a part that you could really, he when you first see him, he's very powerful, and it was fun. It was fun walking into the room. The first big scene I had with everybody, I walk into the conference room and everybody's sitting around, and the president kind of takes over the room,
Hmm.
and without like overacting it, I don't think, there's just a lot of power there. And in fact, uh, but I was teaching an acting class at the time. I was teaching this acting intensive down in South Coast Rep, and so it made me think about it. But preparation is so important, and just being prepared to go in there and be the president. But there was this one point where I got up from the table and I'm about ready to leave, and everybody gets up, which is what they would do.
That's
But it didn't
correct.
look good for them to get up in the scene. You can't, because there was still some scene to go. And so they all started to get up, and I went, "Sit!" And then they all sat down.
And that's not
We did a
scripted?
rehearsal. We did a rehearsal, and then we
Okay.
repeated it because it just works.
That's right.
But then as it goes on, he is put into a position of being tortured and threatened with death, and he dissolves and gives in the space of just like a page or two.
Oh, in that
And when I
one
first read
page.
this thing, I went, "Oh my God!" So now, how am I going to do this? And once again, it was that thing I was telling you about the keep the lid on it, keep the lid on it,
Yeah.
play against it. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. So that when it does happen, it's like he's done. He's in tears, and I didn't know, okay, I gotta cry, ugh, having the makeup people stand by it so you can squirt stuff into my eye, just in case, um, because I didn't know how it was going to go. But once again, it was, well, one thing that happened was one of the writers came in to my trailer as they were setting up the lights and said, "Just want you to know, um, this was part of Navy SEAL training, and people really would crack that fast." And I was like,
Wow.
"Good, good to know, good to know." So, but I did a lot of physical and mental preparation and really just kind of relax, breathe, let whatever comes through. And the director, and oh God, I'm forgetting his name. He was really good. Um, but he was gonna split the scene into two, because I even think there was an act break or something, and we were gonna break it up. But the first take of it, and the camera, I believe, was on me for the first, big take. Um, he saw what was happening, and he just let the camera roll. And
Yeah.
we went through where we were going to break, and nobody said anything, and we just kept going. And it was no problem. Tears, no problem. And in fact, I was able to repeat it like all day, or the couple of hours that we shot that scene. Uh,
When something is perfect, Don't screw with it. Just let
I
it
was really,
play.
I knew when I went past the point and he hadn't said anything, part of me went, okay, yeah, great. As we're doing this. But yeah, he saw what was happening and he didn't want to interrupt it. So yeah, but that was a good show to work on. Yeah,
Wow.
that was the last season for that show. I would like to have gone back and done more of that because that was good.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
are we good for a few more minutes?
sure.
Okay. Willard RS2. I want to take you back to Trek for one more time. There's a lot of Trekkies in this crowd. What was the story of Commander Madden? I mean, you didn't realize that that scene was going to get cut. You know, it was supposed to be the final piece of Nemesis. It became a deleted scene.
Yeah,
Did that relate to the role in Enterprise at all? Because that came the following year, I think Hayes did, because that was season 2 of Enterprise.
right. This
What
was
was?
right after my kids were born,
Oh, okay.
and we were. I remember I read the script holding one of my kids while I was feeding him or her. I forget which one it was. And it had come, and I had just been in 13 days, as
Yeah.
Bobby Kennedy, and I was trying to, capitalize on that a little bit and probably being over careful about what I did. And I got sent the script and I got sent this scene. And I'm like, well, I'm not really gonna go in and read for this scene. It's just this little thing. But then I read the script and I thought, oh God, I really like this script. And oh, I see. He comes in at the end and he's like they're flying off into the new future. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I like this. So I went in to read for it. Did I read for it? Yeah, yeah, I did. I went in to read for it. I got that role, and it was wonderful to shoot. Once again, uh, now that I've seen it on deleted scenes.
Right.
I'm going, oh, now I know how I would approach it. I wish I could do that one over too. Um, I wonder if this is a pattern with me.
Maybe.
But anyway, I we shot it and it was fun. But then I heard that the movie was like getting toward to be 2.5, 3 hours long.
Yeah.
This was when they were editing it, and I just thought, oh well, this scene's going to go because you
Okay. So
don't
you
need
were
this scene.
anticipating.
Yeah. But then I went in to read for Major Hayes,
That's right.
and when I left the room, I think Rick Berman or somebody said, "Do we know him? Is he's familiar?"
It's
Because I didn't bring it up.
it's amazing how life you know, there are things that happen that we don't intend. There's work that we create that doesn't come out. But seeds get planted, you know?
Yeah.
Gates McFadden makes a comment, makes you go and do something, which you don't get. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get something because of trying to be
Right.
got.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that the takeaway from that, because we try at this point, just like Stargate, to come up with the moral of the story at this point in the program, um, is that be willing to go out on a limb. And if you have something that doesn't pan out the way that you want, don't despair. You know, you
Well, I've
tried
found,
and you never know what's going to happen next.
yeah, I mean, I really have found this over and over again that in my experience in all my years in the business, um, that you put out effort and you go toward your goals and you should do that. You can't, you have to do that. But the real gifts, usually come through the back door and you don't expect it.
That's right.
You just don't expect it. And I've just that's been demonstrated to me. It was actually just demonstrated to me last week on something, and I just thought, yeah, it still happens. You do have to put out your effort because that's your job. But when the really great things happen, it's like totally out of like, whoa, this is I didn't expect this, and it's wonderful.
Sometimes we just have to be continually reminded that those things can happen. It's amazing
Yeah,
how easy it is for us to get into a groove of behavior. Well, I've got to do this because this is the way that life works. And then something taps on my shoulder and it's like, well, I didn't expect that. And it's like, well, but this has happened to you before. This kind of thing has happened. Be prepared to be surprised in your life and for solutions and opportunities to come from places other than directly in front of you, because
Hmm.
you make good ripples and
Yeah.
sometimes not so good ripples throughout the world, and
Hmm.
they come back in all kinds of interesting ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Stephen, this has been great.
Oh, well, thank you. The time flew right by.
Thank you so much. Where can we see you coming up? What's going on? I'm looking at this Good Grief here. This looks, it's comedy, but
Oh,
the
that we
subject matter
shot
looks
that
pretty
in the summer
intense.
of 22,
Oh, wow,
and
it's been
it's
sitting there.
also
Okay.
great fun. But it's a small little indie, and I'm not sure if anybody's ever going to actually see it.
Okay.
As usual, things are sort of percolating along. Nothing I can talk about. I've
Okay.
been doing a lot of theater related stuff, and in fact, just finished doing two things last week here in Los Angeles that were just wonderful and great fun and challenging and all that really good stuff. So I continue along in there, and um, auditioning for things, and as always, things are percolating, but nothing I can able to talk about yet.
Okay. Raj Luthra, last question. Would you be interested in
Okay,
returning to Stargate in a new character?
sure,
Awesome.
sure.
They'd be lucky to
Why
have you.
not? Or maybe the reincarnation of Henry Wallace.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I'll do it correctly this time.
Art is never finished, my friend. It's just abandoned.
Right. Absolutely.
So, always want another crack at something else. Stephen, this
Yeah,
has
yeah.
been a pleasure. Thank you for taking your time and being
Oh,
so thoughtful. That was an intimidating question that some fathers would have looked at. It's like, but you went there, and I really appreciate you being considerate about the deeper stuff that episode represented, because it was really heavy. It was a heavy show, and
yeah,
no matter
yeah.
your interpretation on the day, it was
Well,
good.
and actually, I have to say, listening to you talk about it, I realized why I went in that direction because that's the first thing I responded to was, you know, the loss of your child and conveying what that means, feeling and conveying it to an audience. That was the first place that I went. And then you try to work it into this other sort of larger than life character. But that was, yeah, yeah. So you think about that a lot. I went to see a friend's play the other day. It was a reading of a new play was written, and it's about this older couple who, getting into their 70s and stuff, who adopt. They've never had kids, and they adopt this a man and a woman in their 30s that they're really close to, and it's sort of comedic, but it's also very, you know, who's going to take care of you when you're dead? Who's going to get your stuff? Who's going to, there's a lot of questions. But one of the things that I love that the play addressed was when you let children into your life, you let in all the wonderfulness and all the terror of that because you're letting in life, and life is encompasses all these extremes.
Good and
And
bad. It's like what I've heard: when you become a parent,
yeah,
you unlock a huge facet of potential in your ability to feel that you didn't even perceive necessarily that you had before. And
yeah.
some of it is so joyous, and it includes the greatest potential for despair.
Well, yeah, because as soon as you open yourself that way, something bad can happen to them. They could hurt you, which hasn't happened. But
Mm.
I worry. I probably worry a little too much about something bad happening to them. But yeah, you let that stuff into your life, but it's part of the package. It's part of being alive. It's what we have to learn to live with.
When you looked on that, I'm sorry, I apologize. When you looked on that last scene there, do you think he willingly gave himself to that creature?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah, that was even though it was the first scene I shot, that was the one scene I got.
Yeah.
That I know what's happening here. He sees the picture of Kate's daughter,
That's right.
and
And her
yeah,
husband.
yeah, that I knew. So absolutely, I think he says, yeah, yeah, it's willing.
This is what I love about sci-fi. because if we're willing to be open with ourselves, it makes us more empathetic and going, wow, if we're not assholes, it's like, wow, what would I do in that situation? How would I feel? You know? And it's great stuff. Thank you, Steven.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm
Nice
going
to
to
meet
wrap
you.
up the show. Pleased to meet you. I'm going to wrap up the show on this side. So,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Steven Culp, everyone. Henry Wallace in Stargate Atlantis, Miller's Crossing. We have gotten a huge shot of adrenaline this week with a new TV series, and it may be 18 months out. It may be further. We're going to have a lot of time to figure out what this thing is going to be and figure out our relationships with each other. We've already got a huge group of people to the party. I have 300 messages that I have to go through to thank people. For those of you who are watching who have sent messages to me, I've not responded yet. Thank you so sincerely for the offers of help. Give me a couple more days to accept the new reality that is my life now, apparently, and I will start organizing things, particularly everyone who has offered to help. We've got spreadsheets and you have to go in them. So give me a chance to respond to everybody properly. I really am so thankful that the Stargate audience has risen once again and that so many people are interested in discovering this show. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, please click that like button. It really makes a difference with the show and will help us to continue to grow our audience. I don't even really need to say that part of it right now. But if you have a Stargate friend in your life, get this over to them as well, especially if they're McKay and Miller fans. And if you click the bell icon, it'll notify you the next time I have a guest on live. My tremendous thanks. My moderators have done yeoman's work today. 3 hours with Michael Shanks and Lane Gates, and then back here with Steven Culp. What a great guy. Anthony, Jeremy, Kevin, Lockwatcher, Marcia, Raj, Jacob, and hopefully a few more that I'm going to be mentioning here in the next couple of weeks as we onboard some of you into the mods section. But I've got so many areas where I need help. I need clips to be made of all of this archived material. I'm prepared to let you have access to it if you're good with video. Tremendous thanks to my producers, Anthony Rowling, Kevin Weaver, Summer Roy, Bryce Orrs, Eagle SG, Matt Wilson for his amazing opening sequences, and to Frederick Marcoux, who keeps dialthegate.com up and running. We've got uncertain's not the right word. We've got a lot of work to do to get ready for this new show. And there's going to be a lot of fun along the way. And there are going to be people who are wanting to tear it down before it even comes. But I have always been a fan of that gate. And we have been given a fourth chance to get some really cool stories told to us. So let's take that journey together. And I'm really glad that you're here for the ride. If you want to help, if you want to contribute, you know what? Let me go ahead and look this up. Do I still have the file? Let me see here. Okay, here we go. It's not that one. Give me just a moment. Let's see here. Okay, here it is. No, that's not it. I'm trying to get the list of everything that everyone can help me with, and let me pull this here real quick because I'm already getting messages. Who was it specifically who said something they want to help? I can't find it at the moment, but this is what happens when David is not prepared. And to be perfectly frank, I'm surprised that I managed to get this long with it. Okay, screw it. I know what I need. Moderators, if you enjoyed the people that you were interacting with, that'd be great. If you would be interested in becoming one of them. We have a little bit of a process because we are an archival channel, so it's very important that we retain everything that we're given, and that includes the fan questions. I need people who are willing to do 8-minute clips of the work, and this is 370 episodes. We have a chapter archive maintained of everything from every topic, and we're going to need to start expanding to clips every day of that library. And it's not that easy, but it is easy. It's really strange. It's just a lot of material to go through. But at least all the chapters are organized. So that's done. The transcripts. We're about halfway through the transcripts of the show. We had some stalls there, but if you are interested in transcribing or facilitating in that way for the archive, let me show you. Because Steven's, a lot of times our guests hang out afterwards waiting for me to finish, and Steven's gone. So let me pull this up here and show you dialthegate.com so you can see what it is that we're building toward. There's my element right there. Well, just go away. Pull this here. So this is dialthegate.com, which supposedly at some point here in the future is going to get a revamp. And here is the entire archive of the episodes. And Shanks will be on there soon as I can transfer him over from Wormhole Extremists. This is the complete collection. This is the archive of the work that we've done so far. And there's a couple of episodes in there. There's a few people missing, and one day they may hop on board, they may not. But a big piece of that is the transcripts. It's very important that these be searchable so that when Darren and I do sit down and do a book of quotations from the entire history of this franchise, whatever powerful AI that's ruling over us at that point will be able to insert these into it, and it'll say, oh yeah, here's the information here in part 3, in this episode over here, and that's the wrong button that I wanted to push. Hey, build anything with something. In part 3 of Martin Wood, he talks about, and we had to go back in 200. We were sitting at that table reading the script, so we need that pulled and organized for the future. So that's a big thing. If you want to help, email me, dialthegateshow@gmail.com, and give me a couple of days, and I will get back to all of you. I would love to have you, and I know the mods would too. There's something for everyone to do, and we're just getting started. I know this was 373. Before last week when I found out, I would have said that I was probably well over the hill, 65, 70% through what I thought was obtainable, the stories that we were going to get. Boy, was I wrong. Thank you, folks, for being here. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe if you did, because more is coming. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you on the other side.